Hello and welcome to today's video. This time we'll be taking a tour of my vintage Pan Giant paperbacks. Now, we've already done the numbered ones and we've done the Great Pans. Now it's the Pan Giants. Now, in the Pan Giants, we had the Pan Book of Horror Stories, that iconic horror run. We've got loads of James Bond, as well as, well, countless beautiful classic paperback jackets. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and let's take a look. Okay then, so we'll start off with X number one, which is X there, and X is Pan Giant. And these were 3 and 6, these early ones here. And the different, prefix, the X prefix, was just to denote the change in the price. So we had the numbered only series, then we had the Great Pans, and then we had the Pan Giants. And this first one here, X number one, this was published in 1956 by Pan. So there it is, Eastern Approach. Is not the most amazing story, but it is what it is. This one's quite scarce. It's a book on gardening, X2, if you can believe it. Not exactly massively well illustrated, but huge book. Sorrel and Son is number 3 here. Warwick Deeping. Pleasure Beach, number 4. Fanny by Gaslight, number 5. Huge book here, number 6 here. And So Victoria, a robust novel of England in the days of Queen Victoria's wicked uncles. Now, this is number 7, and this is actually quite a collectible title. I had no idea. But yeah, this is quite the book, and one you'll try and, you should try and find a copy of this one, because it does go for a few pounds. If you look that one up, it's like 20 to 30 pounds, that one. Weird. The Way of a Transgressor. Look at that great cover there. Famous News Reporter's Adventures, Nigel Farson. No Arms, No Armour. Another fairly easy one to get, Popsky's Private Army. And, we will still have, in this sort of 50s to early 1960s period, we will still be getting Second World War memoirs. It's as simple as that. Young Lions, this one took me a while to find, and even this is not in the greatest of shape. It's such a big book, and very, very popular, apparently. A Dragon Apparent, Norman Lewis. Non-fiction one. Catherine Carter, A Romance of the Theatre. Cy Webb did the jacket there, I noticed. Jet, Sir Frank Whittle, The Story of a Pioneer. Horned Pigeon, How I Escaped from Germany. Of Marquis, a Second World War escape one. Raintree County, this is a movie tie-in. That's Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift on the jacket there. Beautiful jacket on that one. And she's quite young there, isn't she, Elizabeth Taylor? Vagrant Viking. Learning to Cook. This one's got a laminated front jacket, probably because it was thought to be in the kitchen, so it would get a bit more wear and tear. And this was a TV cook, Marguerite Patin. Famous TV expert, shows how to cook simple, appetizing meals. And look at her, basic oven there. But this was the start of the UK becoming more and more domesticated. And I love that picture of her on the back there with the BBC camera on her. Very, very nice. And Gavin Maxwell, God protect me from my friends. And there we are, already, that's the whole shelf done. Carrying on then, we've got X21, I Leap Over the Wall. A return to the world after 28 years in a convent. Wow. And just what we wanted, yeah, a history of courting. Definitely high on the agenda there. Pretty nice copy of that one. Captain Jan de Hartog. Great action cover there by Rex. Lord Johnny, a lusty novel of an 18th century rogue. Steady on there. Valley of the Vines. Sales exceed 500,000. A superb romance of South Africa. Old Four Legs, story of Coelacanth. It's the big fish there. Sheba's Buried City. Nice archaeological title there. One on the British, Drew Middleton. A lively American commentary. Shadow of the Moon. This is a nice one with John Wayne on the front there. Oh, Promised Land. It's a movie tie-in. Epic story of the Great Southwest. Soon to be filmed by 20th Century Fox. Look at John Wayne. Really nice likeness that by Taylor. And on the back as well. Reminds me a lot of Corgi books from this period. Corgi Westerns. That jacket. Home Before Dark. Another movie tie-in. Gene Simmons. Dan O'Hurley. And a very famous one, Ben-Hur, of course. It's X32. Charlton Heston on the front there. I wouldn't mind getting a slightly better copy of that one, to be honest. It's not difficult to find. I got a photo insert as well. It's very, very easy to find that one. It sold loads, that. Psychology of Sex. This one's a little bit low grade. The Last Hurrah. Another movie tie-in, actually, Spencer Tracy with Jeffrey Hunter and Diane Foster. Well, there you go. Another huge seller for Pan, which was a Peyton Place. Grace Metalius. It was a massive bestseller, that one. And I've got a later printing of X35 as well. And there is also a follow-up, Return to Peyton Place. Yeah, huge for Pan, that was. The protagonists, James Barlow. Another one in the White Oak series, Mazza de la Roche. So these were, once again, incredibly popular. I can remember my gran reading these exact editions. You know, it was very, very popular in their day, and there was a lot of them as well. Alongside the Georgette Hayes, you know, I mean, Georgette Hayes, we think of her as a crime author, but she also did all these sort of historical romances, and they were very, very popular. Gypsy Rose Lee, the frank and intimate story of the Queen of Striptease. Pan once again courting a little bit of controversy with this one. Mr. Jelly Roll. A Woman of Bangkok. Finch's Fortune, another one by Mazza de la Roche. These are not difficult to find because they sold so well. Jenny, Ada Lewis, beautiful jacket on that one. And then the first of the iconic, and it is iconic, the first Pan Book of Horror Stories, selected by none other than Herbert Van Thal. So this is the first one. Usually I keep my Pan Horror Stories completely separate, but because this is number 45 rather than the main run, I wanted to show exactly where this one appeared in the main Pan Giant run. And I've done that with my James Bond ones, as well as the Pan Book of Horror Stories up to number 8 came pre-ISBN. But this is a great one. It was re-released about 8 years ago. It was reprinted in B format with a new introduction by Johnny Maines. But there we are. There is the original one. It's an absolute classic. I really like these. 1959. Of course, as we've seen in previous videos, Pan had done a couple of horror anthologies very early on. But this was the proper first issue of 30 in the iconic Pan Book of Horror Stories. There we are. Good stuff, eh? Okay, carrying on then with number 46. We the Accused. A bit of true crime there. A Summer Place, Sloan Wilson. And I'm hoping, because I'm filming here in the loft, that we've actually managed to just about get the lighting right now. Home from the Hill. Some movie tie-in again. Robert Mitchum, you just see him there. Oh, there he is, clear as shot on the back. Not my favourite actor, Robert Mitchum, to be honest. Number 51 here, A Moment of Warmth. The Mountain Road. A tense, dramatic story of nightmare retreat in war-torn China. Once again, a movie tie in this from James Stewart. With James Stewart. Come In Spinner. Huge, huge book. You got a lot for your money with these X's initially, you know. Cimarron, another Western. Glenn Ford was the star of that one. Stalingrad, the cruelest battle of World War II. Cracking cover, that, isn't it? Can't see a signature on it. Yeah, good one, that. Magnus the Magnificent. Return to Jalna. No problem getting them in nice condition, generally speaking. They Fought for the Sky. World War I Flying Aces. This is The Schoolroom, Nicholas Montserrat. Nicholas Montserrat's first great novel. 65 is Let No Man Write My Epitaph, another movie tie-in. This has got a PEF cover, it's signed PEF, now filmed in Columbia Pictures. Gene Seberg and James Darren. Very nice copy of that one. That is a beauty, actually. The Log from the Sea of Cortez, a Steinbeck, who we love, of course. And then the second Pan Book of Horror Stories. Pretty nice copy of that one. Certainly good enough for me. Not the greatest jacket, that one, but still. It's Horror Stories. The Called and the Chosen, Monica Baldwin. Already seen her earlier book, I Leap Over the Wall. Now it's the Pan Book of Card Games, really iconic book. This is the first print. It went on to be printed many, many times. My friend Tim from the ticket.net Pan Books Collectors website, he owns the original art to that one. It's very cool indeed. Really intricate bit of artwork, that. That's fantastic. I really like the back cover as well, actually. Yeah, the Jean Picard Ledoux. That's the set in particular that they're shown there. Very nice. Friday's Child, Georgette Heyer. And the first of what would be a few Alfred Hitchcock anthologies, stories with a twist, stories which, you know, he would be forever on the lookout for short stories, like Twilight Zone-esque stories for the Alfred Hitchcock TV series. And a lot of them were put together as anthologies. They slapped his name on it, so I suppose he got a little bit of a kickback. And they came out. I mean, Pan published quite a few over here in the States. It was almost like an industry. There's probably at least 100 in the States. Nowhere near that many over here, but I would imagine there must be at least 15 British ones, maybe a few more. The Promise of Nigeria, a Pan original, that one. A couple of copies of this. That's the original first print, Rape of the Fair Country. And then I've got a later edition with a different jacket on it. So I generally, as you know, I generally pick them up if it's a completely different jacket, with the exception of the James Bond books, which I do pick up for even the most subtle of differences. And we've got plenty of Bond to come this time round. And then The One-Eyed Monster, the novel that turns a scorching light on TV. Well, there you go. Right, X75, Scaramouche, Raphael Sabatini. Surprisingly collectible, this guy, if you come across him. Home cookery book. This one isn't laminated. It's a bit more for the elements, but it is what it is. Mandingo. Once again, a bit of a classic. These are sort of, the raw and shattering novel of slavery in the Old South. Quite collectible. These and a few by Lance Horner almost had their own subgenre, but this was pretty much the first one, Mandingo. The Best of Everything, Rona Jaffe. Great Invasion, Leonard Cottrell. He did historical stuff, and this one's on the Romans. Damned Shall Be Desire, Stephen Coultier. The Passionate Life of Guy de Maupassant. The Intruder, Charles Beaumont. Another one, Centenary at Jalna, Maza de la Roche. Vengeance Trail. This one's by Taylor. Once again, very, very reminiscent of the corgi jackets of the time, with like a tiny little vignette down the bottom, then the main thing on the top, and often you get a little bit of artwork on the back as well. The follow-up to Peyton Place, the scorching sequel of her all-time bestseller. And it was a bestseller. It was. Errol Flynn, My Wicked, Wicked Ways. Oakley Hall, another nice western. Neville Shute, A Town Like Alice. Very nice indeed. Of Whales and Men, Whale Hunting in the South Atlantic. Very un-PC today, of course. There's probably his most famous one, Captain Blood, by Sabatini again, Raphael Sabatini. Piracy, Romance and High Adventure. That was the first pan of it. 12 Olympians. This is illustrated, so it keeps the 3 and 6 price, but because it's got the pictures in, that's why it's a bit of a thinner book, you know. The Red Barbarians. Life and Times of Mao Zedong. That's number 104. Caroline Sherry. Alas, Babylon. Pat Frank. Nuclear War cover there. 107 is The Century of the Surgeon. The Reluctant Widow, another Georgette Hare. 110, this I believe, I'm not sure if it's the first print, it might be. No, it is the first, yeah, 62. Slightly different cover because it's got a photograph on the front. Dance Macabre. We've got The Gold of Troy. Grand Hotel, another famous one there, Vicky Balm. And 114 is The Devil in Bucks County, another big, thick book. Okay, so this next shelf, as you'll notice, the books have started to get a little bit thinner, which basically means as time's going on, you're getting less and less book for your original price. This one actually hasn't got a 3 and 6 on it. It's got a 5 and 6, which is the Australian price underneath. It would have had a British one on top of it. It's another Neville Shute for 117. It's the checkerboard. Very, very nice cover there. Another Georgette Hare. Romance, Intrigue, Adventure. Narvik. World War II memoir there. Seek the Fair Land. Set in Ireland, that one. Henderson the Rain King, Saul Below. Ah, what a book, says the Daily Express. Encore Clotilde. Desert Generals. And these, to me, seem a bit of a cop-out because there's not a lot of artwork there. There's great stuff to come, but these ones here, these non-fiction ones, it's almost like they didn't know what to come up with. Back's actually got better design than the front, if you ask me, that one. Last Days of Hitler. I think that's a reprint, that one. Jauna. Mazza de la Roche again. Mary Wakefield. De la Roche. Zaza Gabor, there we are. Look, My Story. Written for me by Gerald Frank. Well, at least she's not trying to hide it behind the ghostwriter, you know. White Oak Brothers. Very, very nice copy of that one. The White Oak Brothers, I should say. George Sava, famous for his surgery stories of in hospital, that sort of thing. This one, Surgery Holds the Door. Amazing that it was such a focus, that. But he made a career out of writing those sorts of books. Devil's Advocate, Morris West. And a reissue of the same book. Magnificent Obsession. Lawrence Williams there, The Fiery Furnace. Hare again, The Conqueror. The epic story of William the Conqueror. Subject for a spectacular new film. She really did pump the novels out, didn't she, old Georgette Hare? Alexander Cordo, Hosts of Rebecca. There's that copy, and then there's a slightly later edition as well. seem to remember one of these. I think one of those I've got signed by him. Fall of Singapore, Frank Owen. And once again, a slightly later jacket. Yeah, just that was enough of a variant for me to have a second copy, basically. A Prince of Captivity, John Buckham. On which Penguin, of course, didn't have the rights for that one. Away from Home, Rona Jaffe. And The Mancunian Candidate. I believe this is quite scarce, in a Pan First. 156. 159. Beautiful copy of that one, Renee's Daughter. And then 161 is the third Pan book of horror stories. Particularly like that front cover jacket. It's by W. Francis Phillips. Really, really good. Excellent stuff. Yeah, lovely. When was this one? 1962. That one came out. And then number 162 is The Loves of Caroline Sherry. By Oval. Cover by Oval there. Right, number 163 is The Gamesters, Peter de Paulnay. Oval cover on that one. 164, The Chinese Love Pavilion. Neville Shute again, Landfall. And I think all the Neville Shutes sell pretty well from what I can see. 167 is The Best of Mike's, George Mike's. Penguin also did a few Mike's books. Then our first Christie of the day, actually, Evil Under the Sun, X170. I suppose at this point, don't forget, Penguin had a few, and also they were predominantly being published by Fontana. 173, The Perfect Wife, Doris Leslie. The Descent of Venus, 174. Another pretty nice copy of that one. Another Hitchcock, My Favourites in Suspense, Part 1. This is number 177. 180, The Proud American Boy. Look at this, The Sky Suspended, Drew Middleton. So the story of the Battle of Britain and the Blitz. But although it's got a photo insert, you don't get a lot of book for your 3 and 6 anymore, Minister of Death. And Leonard Cottrell again. He does the historical ones, Antiquarium and Antiquities, sort of Egypt, ancient Egypt, things like that, lost civilizations. That was his thing. The Duranium Tree. And then 201 is our first James Bond today that we've seen. So this is Thunderball. This will be the first print in the case here. X201 with the great die-cut bullet holes. I've actually got another copy, so we can see the holes with the bullets underneath. Very, very cool, that. Very, very cool indeed. And they could afford to push the boat out because the Bond books were selling so well. Now, it did come out as a movie tie-in. This is a slight variant. It's got 60 cents, which is like an export copy. This is the regular British edition for 3 and 6. Not the greatest condition, but it's the first one with the movie tie-in jacket, which is the 14th printing. And the 14th printing should also come with this little letter, which is called the Domino letter. There we are, a little letter to James Bond from Domino. So when you're coming across copies of that one, have a little check to see if it's got the little note inside. But yeah, Thunderball, very cool. Another Neville Shute, Ruined City. Then yet another Colditz book. This is Reinhold Eggers. This is from the German side, the German point of view. So yeah, he was the commandant, Reinhard Eggers. It's an interesting story, but it's nowhere near as good as the Pat Reed ones, of course. Then we've got a reissue of the Dam Busters. The fantastic seller for Pan, but it's a reissue, illustrated this time. Department of Queer Trades, Carter Dixon. Mr. Moses, Max Cato. 211, His Son and Heir. Then, a real favourite of mine, Death Comes as the End, Agatha Christie. 214, Man with a Tin Trumpet. You recognise that one from the early one with the photograph cover. Once again, I believe my friend Tim has got the original artwork to those two. 219, The Case of the Nervous Accomplice, a Perry Mason one. This one's interesting because it's got the Perry Mason, in effect, almost like a Perry Mason logo going forward on these. A fairly early Anthony Burgess, Doctor is Sick. Never Shoot Yet Again, No Highway. Very, very popular. 225 is Heatwave in Berlin. H.G. Wells, History of Mr. Polly. Robert Heinlein. 227. My Friend Sandy. How I Made $2 Million in the Stock Market. And the last one on this row is number 230. Bethnal Green. Look at that, Rita Tushingham. Mike Sarn, Bernard Lee. James Bond's Bernard Lee. There we are. Bethnal Green. Excellent stuff. So 232 is Casino Royale. I've got 3 different jackets for this one, all with the same pan number. Nice painted one there. Yeah, this sort of range, I don't mind them. And then we got the movie tie-in edition. They are what they are. There's the Live and Let Die, 233, and the later edition. And 234 with Moonraker. And Diamonds Are Forever is 235 because they were all reissued pretty much at the same time. And then a later one of Diamonds. And then we got From Russia with Love. Don't mind that cover. That's really nice, that one. The movie tie-in, which is great with the die-cut cover to make it look like the roll of film. Need to get a better copy of that one, actually. And the later From Russia with Love. Then 237 is Dr. No, the movie tie-in first of all. And then the spider web cover, which I really like, actually. I do like that one. Goldfinger. Movie tie-in addition to that one. 239 is For Your Eyes Only. Couple of copies of that one, different printings. 241, bit of Agatha Christie. Now this is quite a distinctive design on these Christies that will carry on now to give her a bit of an identity within Pan. I mean, it's a shame, but we have to say goodbye to the beautiful painted jackets, and we've got the start of a series of photograph jackets, which I'm not so much of a fan of, but they are part of the Christie story. So there they are. 241. 242, Man in the Brown Suit. And 243, Poirot Investigates. I suppose when these were printed, they were quite modern, but nowadays they don't look the business to me. 246, Scramble. The tremendous story of Britain's most decorated fighter pilot. 248, Master Stories of the 20th Century. That's a Pan original, that one. 258, The Case of the Sunbather's Diary. Once again, using that little bit of a Perry Mason, almost like a logo, a series logo, to give it a bit of continuity, make them all, jump out a little bit on the shelf. Pearlesque Buck, The Exile. And another Sabatini, a later one, The Banner of the Bull. Not Pirates on the High Seas this time. 265 is The Secret Adversary. And C.S. Lewis there, 270. Out of the Silent Planet. There's the second part of my favourites in suspense. They basically just reused the cover and put part 2 on. Overlanders. It's a favourite of mine. Beautiful jacket, that one. Sands of Mars. 281 Arthur C. Clarke. I believe, W. Francis Phillips, but he only puts his initials rather than his full, more recognisable signature. But I really like that one. The Intrigues of Caroline Sherry. Secret of the Chimneys. Arthur Upfield. Boney and the White Savage. Another one by that surgeon, George Sava, this time in Rome. And then this one here is another great one, and it's actually in a bag, Adrift in Soho. This is number 297. And a bit of a bag. The reason that's bagged up, it's a nice copy actually, is because back in the 90s, in my book selling days, I did an event with Colin Wilson, and I had 3 pans, and that was one of them. I took it along to get him to sign, which he graciously did. And very cool. He was such a nice guy. I vividly remember that night. It was so good. And he himself was the perfect gent. So that's just what you want with an author. And he was one of the best. Okay, so X300, From Claudia to David. Grief and Happiness. That Night It Rained. Now this is the first one we see with, it says the best of American crime fiction, and it's got like a handcuff there with a tiny little vignette in the middle, and I think that's a cop-out because, you know, we're not getting the full beautiful artwork, but at least we're getting something. Number 307, this is a bit of an anomaly because I've got 2 copies. They're both first prints, but one is a fat boy. It's almost an extra half bigger than that one. They're both the first printings, but they're printed on different paper. You can see there on the spine. So that's printed on really thick paper, and that one is printed on regular paper. This one here appears to have pictures in, whereas this one doesn't. So it's just like a weird variant. Not sure what was going on there, but there we are. All Things New, a Pan special. And another Neville Shute, Pied Piper. 308 was House of 10,000 Pleasures. Steady on. 309, a Perry Mason there. Case of the Gilded Lily. Implacable Hunter. 313, Violetta and Duffield. And Death in the Clouds. Actually not a picture jacket on that one, but quite nice. Fortunes of Captain Blood. There he is, Captain Blood again. 320 was A Most Secret by Neville Shute. And 321 is another classic. Look at that. A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. So years, and I mean like 6 or 7 years before this became a Penguin paperback, Pan published it in paperback. So that is actually the paperback first, rather than the iconic David Pelham Penguin edition, which, you know, made the book forever a cultural icon, you could say. But this was the first time it was printed, and quite scarce, that one, as you might imagine. So that's Pan Books 321. General Stranger, Donald Mackenzie, 324. A nice copy of that one. 325 is a cool one, The Bomb in the Attic, Jacob Hay. Now that one's got a fairly simplistic cover by Hans Helwig, but I do actually own the original artwork to that one, which I've got here. And I'm not sure how much of this is actually going to be able to go into the picture, but there we are. Let's see if we can get a bit of that in there. So that's the original artwork, and there's the original book for Pan 325. I don't have a lot of Pan artwork, but that is one that I do have, and very pleased I am to have it as well. There we are. 327 is Zoo Quest to Madagascar with David Attenborough. There he is, down the corner there. Georgette Hare again, Arabella. 330, The Case of the Demure Defendant. 331 is the 5th Pan Book of Horror Stories. Now this is from my reading set, but I haven't got a nice copy of it like the other ones we've seen, but I definitely didn't want to not include it, but I'm on the lookout for a nice one. So this is number 5. This is well read. This is probably the one I've had literally since I was a teenager. But fantastic they are too. Really very memorable indeed, those. 332 is Thrilling Cities Part 1 by Ian Fleming. That's a collection of his travel writing. Very nice. Another Alfred Hitchcock there. Stories for Late at Night, Part 1. 346, The Heart of the Storm, David Beatty. And Taken at the Flood, Another nice Christie. This is by far the most expensive book you'll see today. This is the original export first edition for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. There are 3 variations of the first print, but the easy way to tell is if you find this white cover with 60 cents on, because the copies were sent to Australia and New Zealand. It's a pretty nice copy, that one as well. I'm very pleased to have that. This one tends to go, I mean, I've seen it as much as 600, but the average price, a realistic price, is about 250 to 300, I think, for a nice one nowadays. And there's a copy I can actually read. Then we got Jim Clark at the wheel, 352. Jim Clark was a famous racing driver, and then the book was reprinted and updated, including Indianapolis. Nice recent acquisition for me. This is a recent science fiction. 353, 8 Keys to Eden. The Gunts, Frank Norman. Don't know much about that. 363, Inspector West at Home, John Creasy. Then an Earl Stanley Gardner, Perry Mason again. The Case of the Lucky Loser. This one's fairly scarce, I believe. The Dark World of Witches. I was lucky I got a few books on the occult. They included some Pam books in it, and including this one. So I did quite well on that one. Edgar Wallace, The Double. 382 is Strike Hard, Strike Sure. Ralph Barker. And the last one on this shelf is Gently Floating, Alan Hunter. That's number 386. Okay then, Never Go to Sea, 383. Bit of a beaten up old copy, that one, but I don't mind. Fail Safe, 388. I'm Coming to Virginia. And you've got to say a lot of this stuff is probably aimed at the female reader. In a lot of cases, there's a few thrillers, of course. The Sheep and the Wolves. John Creasy here, 391. Policeman's Dread. Boldness Be My Friend, Richard Pappy. One of the great true stories of World War II. Another escape one, I believe. 395 is the movie tie-in to Von Ryan's Express. That was that movie with Frank Sinatra, which wasn't bad. I watched it a couple of years ago. Didn't think it was too bad. Where the Spies Are. 396, David Niven movie tie-in there. 401 is the Sitterford Mystery, Agatha Christie. Morris West, Second Victory. 405 is The Case Against Satan, Ray Russell. There he is, he's at it again, George Sava, another surgeon story in California this time. Ben Hass, The Foragers. Evie Cunningham, Alice. Quite nice, that one, once again, with the picture behind the key. Very, very easily done, of course, but, you know, I quite like the design on that one. 414, another Hillary War with that little vignette inside the handcuffs. Max Cato, or Cato, The Tiger in the Bed. Pam Book of Girls' Names, just what we wanted. A reissue of The Frogman. Send Superintendent West, John Creasy. And then we got the second Thrilling Cities. If you're wondering about these plastic cases that I've got, these are from a company called Deflector DC, and they do cases for, well, just about anything really, but they started doing them for books, and I think they're really good. So my sort of better books, you know, my more collectible titles, I try and put in those cases. They make them bespoke, or you can sort of get them for, you know, standard A, B format, what have you. Clifford Simak, They Walked Like Men, a nice edition of that one. 429 is an interesting one. All Night at Mr. Stannyhurst's, Hugh Edwards. So this copy, or this book, had an introduction by Ian Fleming, because it's a book on gambling. They stay up all night gambling. And let's be honest, Fleming knew a lot about that, as we see in the James Bond novels. So that's why that one's collectible in its own right. There is a copy, I mean, mine's not great, but it's the only one I've ever come across. There's a really nice copy up on eBay at the moment for about £14. 434 is You Only Live Twice. That's the first printing of that one. Not for sale in the UK. I believe the first prints were all exported, but that one's not too difficult to get. Then it's like a second and a third print. Then there's the movie tie-in edition. There is also like the third print with a dust wrapper around it with that movie jacket on, which is quite scarce, and sadly I've not come across one of those, so yeah, it's quite expensive. Undine, 435, and then Moll Flanders, Daniel Defoe, introduced by Colin Wilson, and this is the movie tie-in again with Kim Novak as the infamous Moll. There she is. A Crime of Honor, Giovanni Arpino, 444. Then 447 is the 6th Pan Book of Horrors. There's an absolute beautiful copy of that one. W. Francis Phillips again. I just love that. The rat sitting on top of the skull. That is an absolute minter. Absolutely beautiful. That probably the best one I've got in the whole line. 1965. That beautiful stuff. 457 is Stories for Late at Night Part 2. Another Alfred Hitchcock. Not seen a lot of Saint this time because Pan had already printed them in the Number series and the Great Pans. But there is one more, Senor Saint. 461 is Hammerhead. And 463, The Expert Dreamers, science fiction anthology, edited by Frederick Poole. And that is number 463. Good stuff. Right. Carrying on with number 466, which is The Flight of the Phoenix, which is another movie tie-in and a pretty popular film, I believe it was. All-star cast in that one. Dead Man's Folly, really like that cover for that Christie there. Very, very nice indeed. It's not signed, but I'm guessing it's a W. Francis Phillips jacket. 471, Road to Volgograd, Alan Silito. And then the first Modesty Blaze. This is the movie tie-in with Terence Stamp, Dirk Bogarde, and Monica Vitti as Modesty Blaze. There she is. The female James Bond. That's a reprint, that one. Third printing. I haven't got the first, but very nice. Very nice indeed. 475, Give Us This Day. So Disdained, another Neville Shute. Alan Hunter, Gently Sahib. Then one by John Burke. It's another horror anthology, not a Pan Book of Horror, Tales of Unease. And edited by the prolific John Burke. 483, Dead Men Rise Up Never. And another movie tie-in, The Cincinnati Kid, the Steve McQueen film. Fantastic book on gambling, as you may have known. A poem of a book, says Ian Fleming. Well, it was a great movie. I got to admit, when I rewatched this one a couple of years ago, I was going through all the Steve McQueen movies in order. This was a highlight, I tell you. Fantastic movie. Drown Proofing. Well, that's from The Cincinnati Kid to how to avoid drowning in the pool. Pan did it all. Montserrat, the story of Esther Costello. And another one, A Fair Day's Work, or in A Fair Day's Work, Gov. The Case of the Grinning Gorilla, Earl Stanley Gardner. Richard Gordon, Nuts in May. He was the author of the Doctor books, but at this point, Penguin had the Doctor books, so Pan got in on the other one. Tom and Jenny. The Wrong Box, Robert Louis Stevenson and Lloyd Osborne. Another movie tie-in there. John Mills, Ralph Richardson, Michael Caine. I can just see Michael Caine there. Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. Even Tony Hancock, Nanette Newman and Peter Sellers. That's quite a cast. Must have been an awful movie because I've never seen it. Sequel to Passion Flower Hotel is Passion Flowers in Italy. It's a bit of fun, that one. Then we got All the Nice Girls, John Winton. Bit of a tatty copy of that one, number 512. Hillary Wall, 514, the American one again, with the handcuffs. Prisoner's Friend, Andrew Garve. And another Andrew Garve, The Sea Monks. Very nice. Now this next one, 520 by John Burt. This is the first of 2 Hammer horror omnibuses. So John Burke adapted 1, 2, 3, 4 films, 4 Hammer movies: The Gorgon, Curse of Frankenstein, Revenge of Frankenstein, and The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. And all 4 movies are popped into the one book. And he did the same. There is a second Hammer horror omnibus as well. I believe it's The Revenge of Frankenstein had already been adapted, not by John Burke, and published by Panther about 10 years before, but they didn't mind about that. 521 then, one of the later Christie's, Peril at End House. 522, The Horsey Set. Commander 1, Peter George. He was the guy who wrote Dr. Strangelove. Absolutely obsessed with nuclear bombs, and a very tragic character who ended up committing suicide. That's one of his. Then we got the first of, it's a scarcey one, this, 527, The Man with the Golden Gun. Once again, these copies were exported, the first prints. So these are scarcer than you might think. But there's the first, and I've got a reprint to read. In fact, actually, that one's a Canadian one, I think. The Case of the Footloose Doll, 531. And Girl on the Bus, and Other Stories. This one is another anthology, love story anthology, romance, once again edited by Herbert Van Thal. So he could turn his hand to anything. And I think at this point he was doing a lot of just general editing for Pan anyway. But yeah, it's got some good names in there, Graham Greene, William Trevor, Anthony Burgess, H.E. Bates, Patricia Highsmith. Great author. All her books in Pan are quite sought after, all of them. And you do pay a little premium for those. That's a pretty nice one, actually. There she is. Quite collectible, those. Song of the Undersea, Kirkbride, author of Tamiko. Then we got another Pan book, Horror Stories. This is number 7. Very cool. 556, A Sudden Silence. About a novel about a girl in trouble. Salt is Leaving. This is the one, I believe, which is in hardback as well as paperback. And I think Pan pretty much published them simultaneously. Jacket by W. Francis Phillips. And then this last one on the end here, 567, is Kingsley Amos's James Bond Dossier. And you can see these were taken from the other James Bond titles. But before we get to the next shelf, I'm going to see if I can find my hardback copy of Salt is Leaving. Yep, so there we are. So this is, it says this is the library edition. So the cover is, well, it is identical, just laid out slightly differently. And for whatever reason, this particular one, I guess it was a brand new J.B. Priestley, Pan decided to publish it in hardback. I don't think it's particularly rare like that, library edition. I don't think I paid much for this, maybe like a tenner. But it is an unusual one, and one perhaps to keep your eyes out for, because, it's just really unusual, that's all. Anyway, on with the next lot. So we're almost there now. As you can see, the books have got much thinner. There's an odd exception, but basically, compared to the big tomes that we had at the start, these books are half the size, aren't they? And we'll kick off with 564, which is The Case of the Calendar Girl, Perry Mason. And another one there. Then Alfred Hitchcock, yet again, his anthology, Stories My Mother Never Told Me, Part 1. Arthur Upfield, Cake in the Hat Box. And Boney Buys a Woman. This one, my copy it's cut. So if we compare it against a regular book, you'll see the top edge is cut slightly, and I really don't know why that is, and I don't know if all copies are like that, but my copy is. It's the John Burke tie-in to the Power Game. Whether there's I haven't looked this one up, maybe there's an original cover, and these were taken off and rebound with that cover on, possibly. Book of Bond, 592, another James Bond tie-in. 593 is this one, Booth's Handbook of Cocktails and Mixed Drinks. Absolutely fantastic. I love it. And that one's also signed to Betha and Kath. Happy Days. John Doxat. Just love that one. Just got a special place in my heart, that particular book. Nice copy of that one, actually. Marok 7, this is another movie tie-in. David Osborne, Gene Barry there. Leslie Phillips. For kicks. So the first few Dick Francis paperbacks were published by Penguin. Dead Cert, for example, and can't remember the next one, but Dead Cert and the next one after that were Penguins, and then he was with Pan for a very, very long time. So this is For Kicks, and also Odds Against, the great racing writer. Fantastic Dick Francis, really good. 601, The Long Memory. Let Sleeping Girls Lie. That's a nice cover, isn't it? Yeah, I like the design on that. That's really 60s, isn't it? And what are we looking at date-wise on these? 1967. Yeah, it's a great period in design, that. Tree Frog. 605. The Major. 609. Edgar Wallace, The Clue of the Silver Key. The Duplicate. These photo covers, they make me laugh. This is a bit more like it. 622. Bitter Body. Andrew Garve. House of Soldiers. The House of Soldiers. Big Neville Shute here. The Far Country. Martin Sands. The Jokers. This is another interesting movie tie-in. That's Oliver Reed and Michael Crawford of Frank Spencer fame, and I believe they try and steal the crown jewels or something along those lines. 629, Dare to Be Free. And another movie tie-in, Privilege, Paul Jones. I believe that one's reasonably scarce. The Pompeians, 638. The Man Who Refused to Die, Barry Wynne. 647, Affair at Quali. Pretty basic design here, aren't we? We are going a bit basic on some of these now. Lydia, E.V. Cunningham. That's not too bad, I suppose. 650, Leonard Daventry, A Man of Double Deed. 651, The Loafers of Refuge. Then 653 is one of the later ones now, almost at the end for The Spy Loved Me, of the Flemings. That's really nice with the burnt map cover on that one, plus a reprint. Dr. Divine by Sheila Burns. And this, of course, was the age of Emergency Ward 10 and Dr. Kildare. And these sorts of books, these doctor books, these nurse books, were very popular. And there's a very another one, The Adorable Doctor. But we still had a bit of a market for westerns. So there's Kid with a Colt, Green River Marshal, and then Octopussy. Once again, very, very scarce. These copies were all exported. So finding a nice first edition copy of Octopussy is quite the job. I got mine from Australia. And there's a Canadian copy again, 60 cents Canadian version. A Holiday for Inspector West. And then Funny Ho Ho and Funny Fantastic. Right, one more shelf to go. Right, so I'm afraid it's coming to an end, at least for this particular video in the Pan Giants, with this last shelf to look through. 672, Mirage, Andrea Newman. 674 is The Whip Hand, Victor Canning. Sword of Honor, David Beatty. Then nice bit of science fiction there, The Green Hills of Earth, a classic from Robert Heinlein. Nice copy of that one as well, 679. 681, Superintendent West. And it's Murder, London, Australia. The Chinese Visitor, James Eastwood. That one's got a little export sticker on, 85 cents. The Brigand, Edgar Wallace. Pride and Prejudice. That's got a cover by John Raines, who we'll see a bit more of on the next video. He did the bestsellers of literature. This is in this price point, of course, so it's a thinner book. Wuthering Heights, another one with a cover by Rains. $6.91, Sisters Under Their Skin. Hilary Wall, End of a Party. Andrew Garve again, Ashes of a Loader. The last Pan Book of Horror story we're going to see today, number 8. I think it's fantastic. Got the old head in the, is it a bowling ball case or something like that? It's pretty grim, isn't it? Brilliant. Brilliant cover. I vividly remember this as a kid. My copies, this is in my to be upgraded collection, but still vividly remember that. All the rest of them are, and we will see these later on, they're post Pan series, so they're ISBN basically. 701 is The Assassins. Till Death Us Do Part, that was the famous TV series. Alf Garnett, there he was. Warren Mitchell, Dandy Nichols, Anthony Booth and Una Stubbs. That was the original lineup, wasn't it? In the Heat of the Night, John Ball. A Sidney Poitier movie, Rod Steiger. Then a couple more Highlands, Red Planet, and Farmer in the Sky. They make a nice pair, don't they? They're consecutive numbers. Very nice. Poor Cow by Nell Dunn, author of Up the Junction. Yes, that's Terence Stamp and Carol White. The Gun by C.S. Forrester. Then we've got the first and second Jungle Books. This is the Disney movie tie-ins from 1967/68. Really nice with the cast of characters on the back as well. Really like those. X720 is the Pan Book of Crosswords. We've got Hercule Poirot's Christmas, 721. Case of the Singing Skirt, Perry Mason. The Only Girl in the Game, John MacDonald. That's quite a nice one, isn't it? The sort of fruit machine thing going on there. I quite like that. Powerhouse. Edgar Wallace again, 732. Again, the 3. Ronald Kirkbride, Secret Journey. He was forever dogged with the tagline by the author of Tamiko. Late Western here, Johnny Lost. Why didn't they ask Evans? 739. A little Edgar Allan Poe anthology, Tales of Mystery and Imagination. 742 is a Late Saint, The Avenging Saint by Charteris. Smashing Time by John Burke. Once again, Rita Tushingham, Lynn Redgrave and Michael York, another movie tie-in. And 745, the last of the Pan Giants, is the Stansted Affair, which was a Pan special, a case for the people. It says, don't know a lot about the Stansted Affair. It was evidently a prominent case in the news at that time. But anyway, look at that, 745, and that is the very last of the Pan Giants. So in the next one, which will be the final Pan Bookshelf tour, we're going to do the M's, the sort of the miscellaneous series, right through into my ISBNs and Pan Lozenge, so of such as they are. But anyway, that's going to be in about a month's time. But I hope you've enjoyed that little look through today. It's been fantastic. Certainly some good stuff in there. And yeah, it's been fun getting all those out for today. If you have enjoyed it, do please give it that thumbs up. Do please hit the subscribe button for regular vintage paperback content. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.